Today we're going to convert to an inline thermostat on a 2004 Land Rover Discovery 2. Parts for this conversion cost about $130. Here's what you'll need. For the upper hose, we'll use a Gates 20941, which is the lower hose for a 1996 1.8 liter Ford Escort. For the lower hose, a Gates 23032, which is the upper radiator hose for 2006 Cadillac SRX or STS 4.6 liter without heavy duty cooling. You'll also need a 1 1/4 inch inline thermostat housing. I used a Missouri WN0071, an 1/8 inch National Pipe Thread drain cock, which will be our bleeder, and an 1 1/4 inch or 32 millimeter temperature sending unit adapter. This one came from China and lacked the quality control, requiring cleanup of the burrs that were left on the inside. Some hose clamps. I like the constant tension style. I know they're a pain to install and remove, but they never need tightening as the hoses shrink over time, and they limit the tightness so you don't damage any plastic fittings. A 180-degree thermostat. This is the old school Chevrolet thermostat. This end goes towards the radiator, the other end goes towards the engine. Thermostat has 3 bleed ports which work fine for the Chevy application, but since we're installing in an area where there is limited coolant movement while the thermostat is closed, we need to increase the flow by drilling a 1/8 inch hole in the flange. Open the thermostat housing, remove the rubber gasket. The gasket has a groove which fits onto the thermostat. Lubricate the gasket with a little antifreeze. Place the thermostat in the housing and screw the 2 halves together, making sure that the parts seat correctly. Look into the housing and mark the side where the bleeder hole lines up. This must be located in the up position or the system will be very hard to bleed. The goal of the lower hose is to get from point A to point B, getting rid of the original thermostat. The engine cold, put a drain plug under the vehicle, remove the lower hose from the radiator and drain the coolant. Remove the thermostat, upper hose assembly, and lower hose. Disconnect the header tank hose from the hose assembly and remove the thermostat hose. The new hose needs to be trimmed. Trowel fit the lower hose and trim accordingly. I trimmed the end of the curve off and about 1 inch from the other end. The radiator has an 1 1/4 inch fitting, but the Y pipe is larger, so it is easier to remove the assembly and install the new lower hose. I started this hose on the Y and left it stretch a little, and then in steps worked the hose onto the fitting. Make sure it is in the right orientation since it is tight and hard to relocate. Once the hose is aligned and the fit is good, install the hose assembly and reconnect the header hose. Install the new upper hose. Put the original upper hose in place and mark the position of the thermostat housing. Cut out the piece of hose and install the hose thermostat housing, making sure the bleed hole mark is on top. Trim the 2 upper hoses to fit the temperature sensor adapter. This should be the high spot in the hose. Install the drain cock using thread sealant. In this case, I have an electric cooling fan, so I drilled and tapped the hole for the sensor. Open the drain cock and fill the cooling system according to the factory manual instructions. There is another way to do this conversion using a Gates 22639, which is the lower hose for a 2006 BMW 325 Ci with a 2.5 liter 6-cylinder engine without quick disconnects as a lower hose, and reusing the thermostat to Y hose to fit the temperature sensor adapter. The 22639 hose is 1.5 inches, so you need to take out the 1/4 inch using a clamp on the radiator. I prefer the hose be stretched a little rather than trying to clamp down on a hose that is too big. This method also requires that the upper radiator cover is cut to fit the thermostat.